What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Musings of Maverick channel. I'm your host, Maverick, where today we're going to be watching Fairy Gone episode 11. So, last episode, we were mostly focused on Maria's mental health and whatnot, her backstory, how she views the current situation, how she views herself, how she views her comrades, and I think all in all, I guess the conclusion we can make from last episode is Maria has gotten over her mental hurdles. She views herself as part of this big family with Dorothea, and I think she's back on her feet and ready to fight again. Now, however, at the same time that was happening, Duke Diaz and Duke Dawn have been making their respective moves, right? Especially Diaz, I think he's, well, not think, but I know that he's collaborating with the mercenary groups, and I'm assuming trying to lead a rebellion of some sort, or at least cause some chaos within the universe. Raydon, not really sure what he's up to, but I'm assuming that he's going to be on the opposite side of Duke Diaz. Now, whether or not he is really someone who's trustworthy to the Empire, or he has his own ulterior motives as well, that remains to be seen. Now, a war is about to break out, so I'm not gonna go on any further. Let's let the story do the talking. Alrighty, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. This better be good. Imperial Embassy? So yeah, this is a overtaking. So is this a rebellion or an invasion? I'm still not entirely sure. I think it's a rebellion. Well. Artificial fairies. Leave our country, everyone. Okay, there we go. It's a rebellion. A rebellion from the Empire. Dorothea. Yep. So these has declared independence after he got a lot of artificial fairies and a fairy weapon. Alrighty, let's see what else we have in store. United Music... Oh, Uninvited Music Corps. To get the fairy weapon. Oh. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, she is one of the 7 knights, so she has her own fairy weapon as well. So she's one of the strongest fairy soldiers in this world. Hmm. See, I don't really know what they're rebelling for, except just to get power. It doesn't seem like the people are suffering or anything. Like, if there was oppression and whatnot, and prejudice, I could maybe get why they would want to rebel. But, as far as I can see, it seems life is fairly good. Informants? Alright. As I said before, the Emperor is really just a figurehead, according to the lore of this story. But appearances must still be kept. Is it just me, or does that seem like awfully primitive protection for one of the strongest weapons in this world? Although, to be fair, we haven't really seen the full extent of the capabilities of fairy weapons. Alright, are we actually gonna get romance between Free and Maria? Oh yeah, they just got back. Oh, and they still have to deliver that message back to the Prime Minister. Whatever the heck's in that box. Shouldn't... You're the second in command, aren't you? But I got a bad feeling about this. This is how they fight? Alright. On frickin' castles? Oh, here we go. One of the 7 knights. Director Neen. I believe her nickname is something like a witch. Or... yeah, from the from Wolfram. He has some contingency plans? I want to see her fairy though. I see the witch. Oh! Their goal is actually to assassinate the Prime Minister! Okay. It was just a lure to get all the forces out of the capital. Maybe look outside the window? Oh, not the Prime Minister. The Emperor. But seriously, the security in this place is... like... when a whole army can just move into the capital, that's... I guess they are short on manpower right now, due to most of the forces being at the far side territories. Only 4 people from Dortia. I yeah. I like how even though this is, you know, a I like how even though this is, you know, more technologically advanced and whatnot, they're using guns and, you know, mechs in a way. And yet they're still fighting like it's the Middle Ages. Like that was like bow and arrow and shields. Oh, is this actually a song as well? So that's what he wants. Okay. So it's not oppression or anything. Hmm. Oh. Maybe save the music until they're actually fighting or showing action. Hmm. This is one of the 7 knights who was killed in the war. Protecting 3. Hmm. I guess he's more familiar with this very weapon. I guess this is his theme song. These guys are bad shots. right? So they're just retreating. Yeah, their entire plan was to allow the elite force to get into the palace. So there were 2 diversions in total. But the Emperor is just a figurehead, though. Would anything really happen if he's dead? Hmm. Damn. You guys have crap aim. I don't really see any defenses, though. Like, where exactly are the defenses? Yeah, I don't get it. Where are the defenses? Seriously? This is the gate that never fell? Oh my god. Ugh. Alrighty, so the war has started, and it's finally confirmed in this episode that Duke Diaz is planning a rebellion, right? He's declaring his independence from the Empire, and I guess in a way plans to break up the Empire, and, well, that remains to be seen. So we'll talk about motivations a little bit later, right? But as far as we can see right now, he's a pretty smart dude, right? He planned these things out a long time ago and in different steps, right? It's all been leading up to this right now. So first he did some sabotage stuff to the artificial fairies to create that entire commotion to force them to force the Empire to reevaluate the artificial fairies, and also by protecting the Prime Minister in the process, Diaz got himself hands on a fairy weapon, right, which he later stole by virtue of staging a ambush, right? So there's that part, and then also, planning 2 types of diversions, right? One diversion where he just declares an uprising or declares independence, a rebellion within his territory, take all the heavy forces, the remainder forces, and the elite forces of the Empire, force them to go down to his territory, at the same time slip into the capital with a small elite force of his own, in order to directly attack the palace, right? And even when attacking the palace, he used multi-pronged attacks to, also divert the attention of the defenders and really only concentrate on one gate, which is being led by Bibi, right? And so he has breached the gate and is now within the palace, or at least within the palace grounds, if you will. Now, I suspect that this is probably not the end of his scheming, because as we can see within this episode, Diaz himself is with Wolfram, and they are separate from all the attacking forces, right? They're apparently traveling conspicuously to some place, right? Covertly into some other place. Now, what that place is, I'm not sure, but I suspect it's going to be one of 3 different things, right? Number 1 would be he's going through a secret passage, if you will, to directly get inside the palace and to assassinate the Emperor. Now, personally, I feel like this might be the least plausible out of these situations, simply because I don't think killing the Emperor really achieves much, if you will. Like I said numerous times, the Emperor in this setting, in this world, is really just a figurehead. Think of England, if you will, with Queen Elizabeth and the Prime Minister. So the Emperor here is more similar to like Queen Elizabeth. Like killing her, yeah, it's going to raise havoc, but it doesn't really it's not really going to impact the day-to-day politics or the grand scheme of things, if you will. Now, the second part, which I feel like is more feasible, would be actually trying to slip in and assassinate the Prime Minister. Now, that would be of consequence, because the Prime Minister here is actually the one holding all the power and deciding all the stuff. So if you take him out, that's going to create chaos within the Empire, and Diaz would be able to use this opportunity to rise up. So that part, I feel like this is a much more smart way to go about things. Now, thirdly, and this one is more pure speculation, and that is perhaps Diaz and the rest are trying to get into some place related with fairies. So maybe he's trying to raid the fairy weapon vault, or maybe try to find the, all the fairy tombs or whatnot from the Ministry of Fairies, or wherever the heck they're holding these kinds of stuff, right? Because as far as we know up to now, these fairy tomes or fairy-related stuff is of huge importance within this world, and it's maybe even more valuable than actually getting a successful assassination on either the Emperor or the Prime Minister, right? So I believe we're not at the end of the scheming yet. He's probably still going to try and do one of these three different things, and BV himself is actually still a sort of a diversion, if you will. So those are my thoughts on that. And speaking of this, so again, back to the motivation part, right? As I was mentioning within this episode, I really didn't get at first why they wanted to rebel. By all means, from what we've seen in 11 episodes so far, it seems the people are living fairly well, if you will. Like, obviously, there's still going to be some poor guys, some rich guys, and whatnot, inequality and all that stuff, but by all means, it seems that it's a peaceful world, right? It's been peace for 10 years now, and I'm not really seeing, it's not a case where, after being unified or whatnot, they're living under a state of oppression or in a state of poverty. It's not like a dictatorship where, the people are suffering, right? From what we can see here, it's not like that. And indeed, that is why 3 himself is, even though he was on the opposing side during the war, is now part of the government, because he believes that right now this is a peaceful world, and it's a great world. He wants to keep it that way. And indeed, that's what the Prime Minister, as we see here, is saying as well, right? As long as the Emperor is there as a figurehead, a symbolification of peace and unity, then let the people live on, right? There's no need to go back to war again. It's not going to help anyone. So I was quite confused as to why Diaz would want to rebel. Maybe just purely for his own personal motivations, right? But he did mention the stuff about the fairies and trying to open fairy technology to all. So I guess in a sense, like, again, I'm not really sure if Diaz is just saying this to try to justify his own actions. But if that is really what he believes in, I guess in a sense that could also be true, because definitely here we see that the Empire has put a firm grip on this technology, right? It's only, it's mostly forbidden, it's mostly banned, and only, people who are recognized by the Empire, by the government, are able to use these kinds of fairy weapons. It is, in a way, a sort of censorship, but at the same time, is this enough to justify declaring a war over, declaring a civil war? I don't know, man. But anyways, that's what he's saying anyways. Wolfram, still not really sure what his entire motivation is. Like, I know he wants to get revenge on the Empire because they probably were the cause of his family's death. But at the same time, we already see that he's double-crossing them, right? He's working for Diaz, but at the same time, he leaked information to Ray Dawn, to Duke Dawn as well. So, what's up with that? Not really sure there. That's something to keep an eye on. BV, he just wants to go where war is, right? The only thing that he cares about, really, is if there's any conflict that he can thrive in. That's all he wants. He's a man who lives on the battlefield, and if there's chaos, if there's war, he's all for it, right? So those are the different motivations for them. Again, probably we'll need to learn more about Diaz in the end, because I don't know, I'm not entirely convinced by that he has righteousness on his side. Okay, and so that covers all the plot and stuff. One other thing that I like to talk about is actually in regards to realism for this anime. I know it's a fantasy, it has magic and fairies and whatnot, so, but at the same time though, being a kind of a history buff and a military nerd, I do like to sort of do a deeper analyze into these kind of situations and to see whether or not it makes sense or not. And I gotta say that the battles that are currently being portrayed here don't really make a lot of sense. And what I'm talking about is having a, you know, sort of like castle defense mechanisms, and then using, you know, like artificial fairies by all means are sort of like mechs, right? And the technology level that we've been seeing from them so far is at least about maybe mid 19th or even late 19th century, maybe even early 20th century, right? Especially since they're using rifles and whatnot. And I believe in the very first beginning episodes, we saw them use cannons or artillery pieces as well. So it makes absolutely no sense that they're still using defense mechanisms such as a castle and fighting there in order to fend off the various forces. And I don't know, I guess it's maybe a more stylistic decision, right? Instead of anything practical, or perhaps they just want to like. Okay, so the reason why I'm so unforgiving on this part is because castles were made obsolete a long time ago, and for good reason, right? The last remaining defensive use of castles really occurred about maybe in the 15th century. After that, you know, castles were made obsolete, right? Mostly by cannons and evolving military tactics. So cannons were made obsolete around the 15th century. It was later the substitute for it is actually a sort of fort that is star-shaped or, you know, irregular shaped or whatnot. But the point is that castles, you know, being these high buildings, they're highly visible targets, and the surface area of them is too large. It's really not feasible to use them as defense mechanisms anymore. And especially when you look at this anime and you see the weaponry that they're using, you look at the artificial fairies, what kind of weapons that they're using, I find it hard to believe that they're still using castles as a sort of, you know, defenseman, right? And so anyways, the actual evolution of this would be from castles into sort of star-shaped forts, if you will, and then later on to more to the modern kind of defenses that we know today, sort of like pillboxes and bunkers, right? Things that ride very low, so that they are not as easily targeted and they can be reinforced more easily. And that would be a much more efficient way of building a defense, instead of what we see here. Like, seriously, when that military ministry dude was hammering on about how nobody ever breached the gates and whatnot, I was looking at the entire palace and I was like, where are your defense structures? Where are your points of defense? It's basically just, I know, it's like the White House, right? It's like a White House right there, and you got a whole army rolling up to your front lawn, and there's no defense there, right? There's just no defense there. No pillboxes inside, no bunkers. So yeah, just one attack from DV into the main structure, and he's gonna blow a hole in that structure, and they're gonna breach it, right? So I don't know, man. I feel like I guess this might be deliberate in a way, like maybe they just after the war decided to completely neglect anything military related in regards to defense because they figured they wouldn't need it anymore. I guess that is a plausible explanation for this, but I'm just saying, it's cool to think about, you know, mechs fighting in these sort of medieval settings, if you will, but it doesn't really make sense logically, is what I'm getting at. Okay, so that has been more of a ramble than I wanted it to be, but hopefully my point is getting across. It's not something that I'm going to duck points for it's just something that brings me out of the immersion, right? So I guess if you feel like it's cool, then it's cool, but if not, I would have preferred if they could balance both being cool and also having reasonable explanations for everything. So, anyways, that's been my review of episode 11, and also, just a quick heads up to you guys, the song within this episode, I believe its name is Catastrophe. Let me check real quick. I believe it's called Catastrophe. Yeah, it's called Catastrophe, and same as the insert songs in the past few episodes, they have already put this up on YouTube as well, so I will link it in the description down below so you guys can go hear it as well. And I'm assuming that this is probably like BV's theme song or something, right? The song that he was whistling throughout the whole way through. So anyways, that's been episode 11. I will see you guys next time. This is Maverick signing off.